You mentioned stress, because as you mentioned, I referenced in that prior conversation of how I went through the Surgeon General's report with episode one, or part one, I should say, of this mental health mini series. And this is, now part two. Part one was uh, teenage mental health, or even dipping down a little bit younger than teenage. So we could say childhood mental health. And now we're focusing on adult. But with stress, I took a peek at the CDC, because the CDC has a lot of guidelines, and a lot of tools also on their website. And the CDC has a coping with stress page. And I'm going to list off real quick, and I did this leading up to the interview here, but I'm just going to list them off for you. So here are the bullet points of coping with stress per the CDC. Take breaks from watching, reading, or listening to news stories. Take care of your body, so like mind and physical. Make time to unwind, connect with others, and then connect with your community or faith-based organization. And as I was reading through those, I couldn't help but notice, like, at some point during the pandemic, especially based on where you live, or maybe more so based on where you live, all of those things were either hampered or completely taken away at some point during the pandemic. So what did that leave people with in order to cope with that stress? I guess that's my question. Like, what are some other ways, like in those instances, if you can't attend your church because of like social distancing and other requirements, if you can't connect with others because work is shut down, if you can't unwind because places you would go to unwind are shut down, or care for your body, or take break from watching the news, well, everything we're consuming, trying to learn about the pandemic, is in the news. So, Dave, I'm just curious of what are maybe some other coping mechanisms for stress for adults that you could share with the listeners?
That's interesting. So yeah, it kind of names just about everything there, and as you said, it takes away just about everything that it mentions. One of the things that I did personally is I continued to I was a runner, and I continued to run. We ran with people. We just kept a distance from one another, and we still continue to have our community. But I remember the time when the playgrounds were roped off. They had like yellow tape around them, and you couldn't even go on play. Everything was shut down. It speaks to time with yourself. You're going to have to, in a moment like that, you're going to have to learn to be able to deal with the man or the woman in the mirror. And that's where we're beginning to start seeing some problems come out, because I've heard it said that people would rather receive a toxic electric shock than have to be alone with their thoughts. And so it creates a difficulty. I think that we can move, we can get our heart rate up. We can listen to podcasts. We can watch church virtually. The church I attend, the church at the Springs, did church at the drive-in, and they did some of those things. But as it is now, we have all those things back, most of them. But there are some listeners across the country that maybe still have some lockdown type things. I think you got to create some new opportunities to get moving, get your heart rate up, to find new things to do. But at the same time, it's an information overload once again, because we'll just tend to go to our default on our phones and our devices, and that cannot always be the source of great things. So we can get some ancient wisdom, open the Bible and read through there a little bit, and pick up the phone and call people. Those are some ways of bridging the gap. We do have, I know as a counselor, I continued to counsel all the way through the pandemic, and it was just virtual. I was on Zoom calls or phone calls or FaceTimes. So even though it's a screen, it's definitely not the face-to-face. However, we continued to supplement that. And people got creative. I noticed the families would create game time together and stuff like that. But at the same time, as we were mentioning earlier, if there were cracks, the cracks got bigger because of that. And the stress got worse. And therefore, you can begin to start seeing some epidemic overwhelm, if you will. It further revealed what was already there. The cracks were there. They got bigger. And yet at the same time,